My name is Sarah Chin, and this is the story of how rock bottom became my foundation. 3 years ago, I was a different person. I was happy, or at least I thought I was. I was married to David, a good man who worked construction. We had just found out I was pregnant with our first child. We were terrified, excited, and completely broke, but we were ready. We'd signed a lease for a small apartment in Chicago, nothing fancy, but it was ours for the next year. Then David died. A scaffold collapsed on the job site. One moment he was texting me a photo of our apartment keys. The next moment, my phone was ringing with a police officer telling me my world had ended. I was 7 months pregnant and suddenly a widow. The funeral costs devastated what little savings we had. The landlord, a man named Marcus Brenner, he knew all of this. He brought flowers to David's funeral like he was my friend, like he cared. But when I missed my first rent payment by 1 week, everything changed. I was working part-time at a coffee shop, trying to make ends meet, but my body was shutting down. The pregnancy was difficult. The doctor had put me on bed rest twice. I was barely making it, and I was honest with Marcus. I told him I'd pay double the next month. Just give me 2 weeks, I begged. He gave me an eviction notice instead. It's just business, he told me, not even looking me in the eye. I have bills too, you know. I remember standing in front of his office, my belly huge, my ankles swollen, tears streaming down my face, and him basically shoving me out. His secretary was crying. Even she was disgusted with him. It was late October when I got the notice. The eviction date, November 15th. I was due December 3rd. I tried everything. I called legal aid, but they told me I didn't have a strong case. I applied for emergency assistance, but everything moved too slowly. I had nowhere to go. My parents lived in California and didn't have the means to take me in. David's parents had their own problems. I was completely alone. On November 14th, at 8 p.m., Marcus's crew changed the locks. I had a suitcase and a box of baby things. That was all they let me take. I stood outside my apartment building in the freezing cold with my 7-month pregnant belly, and I broke down. I literally collapsed onto the sidewalk, and a neighbor, a kind woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, found me and took me to a shelter for pregnant women. The shelter was clean, but it was heartbreaking. I shared a room with a girl named Jessica, who was only 19 and had lost custody of her first child to social services. The other women had their own traumas, their own stories of being at the absolute bottom. My daughter, Emma, was born on December 2nd during a blizzard, 1 day early, 1 day too soon. She weighed 5 pounds, 5 ounces, and she was perfect. She was also born in a hospital bed while I had no address to put on her birth certificate. I spent a month in that shelter with my newborn. My body was broken. My heart was broken. But Emma was perfect, and I made myself a promise. I would never forget what Marcus Brenner did to me, and I would make sure he paid for it. But I'm not a violent person. I'm not a criminal. So my revenge would have to be something else entirely. I started working again when Emma was 2 months old. It was brutal. I'd leave her at daycare and work double shifts at the coffee shop, then pick up evening shifts doing bookkeeping for small businesses from my laptop. I slept maybe 4 hours a night, but I had a plan, and that plan kept me going. When Emma was 3 months old, I opened my first investment account with $47. I started reading everything. Real estate investing, stock market trends, financial planning, property management. I became obsessed. Every penny went into investments. I rented a room in a house with 3 other people so I could save money. I made Emma's baby food from scratch. I bought her clothes secondhand. I didn't go out. I didn't have a social life. I was a ghost with one purpose. By the time Emma turned 1, I had $12,000 saved. By the time she turned 2, I had $45,000 and a real estate license. By the time she turned 3, I was working as a realtor and had $120,000 in various investment accounts. And I was watching Marcus Brenner's empire. Turns out, Marcus owned 17 apartment buildings across Chicago. He had a reputation for aggressive rent increases, minimal maintenance, and predatory eviction tactics. He was good at squeezing vulnerable people. He'd been doing it for 20 years and getting richer while destroying lives. One day, I was going through property listings, a habit I'd developed, and I saw it. Brenner's flagship building, the one where he ran his main office, was being transferred to a trust that was being liquidated due to financial troubles. His company was overextended. He'd made too many risky bets, and they were collapsing. Marcus Brenner was going down. And that's when I smiled for the first time in 3 years. I was 28 years old, I had $340,000 in assets, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. The building, Brenner's flagship property on North Ashland Avenue, was gorgeous. 12 stories, brick and limestone, built in 1924. It had been neglected, sure, but it had bones. The property was worth about $4.5 million before the foreclosure, but in this liquidation sale, it was listed at $3.2 million. It was still way above my means, but I knew how to work the system now. I partnered with an investor named Robert Chen, no relation, but funny enough, we'd eventually marry, but that's another story. I'd met Robert through my real estate work. He was wealthy, successful, and most importantly, he believed in my vision. We formed an LLC, secured a loan for $2.8 million, and I put in $400,000 as my stake. It was everything I had. It was terrifying, but we got the building. The day I walked in as the owner, I stood in the lobby where I'd cried as an evicted, pregnant woman, and I let myself feel every single emotion. Then I got to work. The next person I hired was Mrs. Rodriguez, the woman who'd found me on the street. I made her the building manager. I hired people from the community, people who'd been hurt by landlords, people who'd been cast aside. I knew their stories because I'd lived them too. We renovated that building in 8 months. We modernized it, preserved its historic charm, and upgraded every unit. But here's the thing, we kept rent affordable. We built in a rent control mechanism. We provided legal aid to tenants. We created a tenant union that actually had power. And we filled it with people like me. Single mothers, widows, people struggling but working hard to build something. Marcus Brenner watched all of this happen. He still owned several buildings, but his fortune was shrinking. He tried to sue me on some trumped-up charges, but his lawyer had abandoned him halfway through the case. He was becoming toxic. Even his own employees were leaving. 6 months after we took over the building, I arranged a meeting with him. He thought I was going to offer him a deal. Maybe I wanted to buy his other properties. Maybe I was going to be reasonable, do some business, make money together. Instead, I brought him to the building and showed him a wall. On that wall, we'd created an installation. Photographs of families we'd helped. Single mothers in new apartments. Children in safe homes. Elderly people who wouldn't be put out on the street. We called it second chances. Among those photos was one of me, 7 months pregnant, crying outside his office. "Do you remember me?" I asked him. He got pale. He knew exactly who I was. "This building used to be yours," I said calmly. "You used it to destroy people. I used it to save them. And I'm going to do that with every building I buy." "Sarah," he started. "I didn't." "You did." I cut him off. "And I want you to know, I'm not done. I've already bought 2 more of your buildings. I'm going to buy the rest, and I'm going to turn them all into places of hope. That's your real punishment. Not bankruptcy, not failure, but the knowledge that everything you built for greed is being rebuilt for compassion." He left. He aged a decade in that moment. 6 months later, Marcus filed for full bankruptcy. He was forced to liquidate his remaining properties. And guess who bought most of them? Me. With a network of investors, all aligned with my vision. Within 5 years, I owned or had controlling interest in 23 apartment buildings across Chicago. Every single one was a safe place for vulnerable people. Every single one was built on the foundation of my pain and my promise. Emma is now 9 years old. She's brilliant and kind. She spends weekends helping at our tenant support centers. She knows her daddy died, but she also knows that her mom built something beautiful from that tragedy. Last year, I received an award from a housing nonprofit. The plaque said, "For transforming the Chicago housing market with compassion and vision." But I know the real award is in every family that's safe, every child sleeping in a secure home, every person who isn't being preyed upon by someone like Marcus Brenner. They say living well is the best revenge. But I say building better is even better. Marcus Brenner lives in a small apartment now. Ironically, one of the ones I own, though he doesn't know that. He doesn't evade rent because he can't afford to evict himself. And sometimes I wonder if he drives past these buildings and remembers what he did to me. I hope he does. Because forgetting would be the greatest tragedy of all.